Hey everyone, you're watching Ash on Comics. I'm Ash. Here's today's comic. A little moment of silence for the last issue of Immortal Men. Very bummed. Immortal Men number 6. This was one of the New Age of Heroes books. This is the one created by Jim Lee and James Tynion IV. It is my favorite of the series. This is the series that, in my mind, feels very similar to X-Men. Not a clone of X-Men. These aren't mutants. They have their own mythos that's very interesting. The whole world building of this is the most interesting of all the other New Age characters. I thought it had the most potential. I really liked where it was going. For whatever reason, this was not successful enough to DC, who around issue 4 decided to announce its cancellation while it was at about 26,000 in sales. That's approximately 4,000 less than any of the Marvel X-Men books. And I believe that there's other New Age books that have less sales. I don't know all the numbers. I believe this is one of the better selling books. So I just think that this one had better expectations. And so they're pulling the plug, and I feel that's bad because even with this last issue, you're going to see, I believe, that this is a book that should have been. They should have believed in this book and said, you know what, you guys aren't selling? We're going to get this first story arc out, and you're going to change your mind. So here we go. Nice cover, too, by the way. I really like this. Is my favorite cover, I think, of all the books, or all the Immortal Men books. The End of Forever, Part 6. So, here we are in the Siege. The Siege is the Infinite Woman's base. If you remember, there's five immortals. There's the Infinite Woman, there's the Immortal Man, and then there's 3 others. And we don't really know about the 3 others because this whole series has been about her and the Immortal Man. The Immortal Man has the Immortal Men. His team are called the Immortal Men. That's kind of the similarities of like X-Men. You have Charles Xavier has his X-Men. His base is called the Campus. You know, you can kind of see the relation there. But everything else ends. That's just in feel of the similarities. So the whole thing about these immortals is they have their own sort of calling. And her calling is conquest. The Immortal Man is action. And so she believes that, and all these immortals have been around since the beginning of man, and they've decided together that they're going to guide man through existence, each according to their own calling. So she believes that man is strong only when they have something to fight against, that it brings out the strength in humankind, which there is some truth to that. The Immortal Man realizes, like, yeah, but if left unchecked, if that's all that it is, that's a problem. There needs to be more, which she can't see because that's kind of what she embodies. So each of them have their own, like, their alkalites and stuff, and I think that's kind of interesting. That all the Immortal Men characters, like, would the equivalent of mutants. They're not mutants. They're created by the lifeblood of these beings. So that's kind of neat. So in this book, we actually get to see 2 of the other immortals. We still don't see the 3rd one. And she is calling for like a council. They meet every 100 years. And apparently the last time they met was just after World War II. And she's calling council, and they're like, what? It's too early. We can't do it. Da-da-da-da. Yeah, but the Immortal Man's dead. The rules have changed. Oh, say it isn't so. So they decide, okay, we're going to meet, blah, 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 blah. Okay, we'll meet in a month. Here's where we're going to go. Da-da-da-da. And one of her henchmen shows up and says, the Immortal Men are here. And and they are still like on the comm, and they're like, "What? What you said?" So she's like, cuts the communication, threatens his life. How dare you? What are you doing? And this is pretty cool. At this point, I'm like hooked in the story. We're just a couple pages in, and I'm like, oh, what's going on? This is great. Like, I want to know. This whole mythos everything's been building up to this. And if you don't know, or if you don't remember, the Immortal Men themselves, they don't have their leader anymore, and they've decided they got one last fight. They have to try to take her out. They're just on their own, and they're trying to formulate some plan of what to do. So one of the subplots here, we have this guy, I forget his name, but he was the one protecting the main character. Forgetting his name, Caden. Anyways, he was protecting him. He's like this little rich kid before the Immortal Man showed up, and he got kind of caught in the middle. But basically, he's got some background with Amanda Waller and the government secret task forces and all this stuff. So he's kind of come to her. He was part of some group called the Carthage Group, which she doesn't really know about. She knows about, but doesn't really know about. So that's like a bargaining chip for her, to like talk with him, and he just wants her help to find the boy. Meanwhile, back in the action where we left off last issue, Caden Park, that's his name, who basically took the Immortal Man's powers. That's what his ability is. And every Immortal Men character, when they get the blood of their progenitor or whatever, manifests in a random kind of way. So it's kind of like mutants in that sense. Like, there's no like, oh, I'm going to give them this power. It's not preordained. So his manifestation that the Immortal Man ended up seeing was that he can touch and get the skills and knowledge and everything of the person he touches. So the Immortal Man actually was going to use him originally to kind of shift his body into, and you find out that was kind of a nefarious plan. You're like, wait a second. But then the Immortal Man died and ended up using him to be like, hey, you're our last hope. Shake my hand. And you're not really 100% sure how much it worked, because at the end of the thing, he's like, I don't know if anything happened. Then he's got this mask, which is a blood metal thing that the Immortal Man forged, which has got all the blood of every Immortal Man that he ever created. And because of his unique power, when he's touching the mask, he's able to pull from basically all the things. So the potential for his ability and power is immense. He just doesn't have any skill. And he's got this Cortana-like character. If you don't get the reference, is a holographic computer AI character from Halo. That's one of the beings, and this consciousness is able to sort of talk. She's not really real, but her consciousness is able to talk to him and walk him through things, which I find interesting. Having that sort of Force Ghost teacher aspect, because the Immortal Man's not really there. So he's fighting, and he's got it's like Neo, right? So she can download powers into him at will, and he's fighting the blood beasts that the Infinite Woman creates. And so that's going on. Don't want to go through the whole story thing. We have Hunt, which is one of Infinite Woman's Immortal Men that she created. It's kind of like her number one. We got Reload, who I guess is, we got a Sabretooth Wolverine rivalry thing going on here, similarly. And he's like, you guys get out of here, I'll hold him off. And they realize that this tower thing is what's cloaking the siege. And their plan is like, look, if we blow this thing up, the siege will become, seen to all of New York, everything. They'll have other problems to deal with, because they're trying to keep this whole thing is like secret. This has been a war in the shadows for 10,000 years. Mankind doesn't know about this whole existence, and so they're like, look, we blow this up, it unveils them, and all of a sudden, they're caught with their pants down. They'll leave us alone. We can get out of here. Like, okay, that's a great plan. So they're going to try to figure out how to do that. And I kind of respected that too, because they've already established that the Infinite Woman can kill the Immortal Man I don't think that these guys are up to the task to beating her. So if they had like written the books like, oh, but we found a way to beat you, I would have just been like, that's kind of let down. Like, but that's not like, they're just like, okay, well, we can get a small victory here if we do that. Okay, great. And that was more believable. It makes the villains feel much more threatening. So here's some dialogue with Amanda Waller. This is all subplots, so I'm not really going to go into it. You should really read this book. Yeah. So we get the fight going on between Hunt and Reload. I will admit, I will concede, if you're listening and these character names are stupid, you're right. The character names are not the most well thought out. However, it's better than things like Aqualad. Like, I have to tell myself, like, in DC terms, they could have made worse names. So I deal with it. So they're about to, like, blow this thing up, whatever, and guess who shows up to confront Caden? And her sword, I guess, is also... This is all, like, based off metal, which I think is an interesting aspect to DC, the whole metal thing. It's not really clear for people who haven't read. Like, they need to do a better job of, like, re-explaining to new readers what the deal with the metal is. But her sword cancels out his mask sort of thing. So not only is he facing her and she's, you know, more powerful than him, he doesn't have the abilities. So they're fighting, and then you see Timber. Is that her name? Timber? Paul Bunyan character. She's like, no, grows and decides to smash the tower because he's gonna die. And this is Neo fighting Mr. Smith sort of thing. Like in the Matrix, it's before he becomes the one. It's like you don't beat an agent, you don't beat one of these guys. So she's like, no, I'm gonna stop this, and she smashes the tower, which decloaks the siege. Now these giant vessels are over New York. People are like, what the F? You know, just, oh shit. So their whole thing is, and then there's a cool line here, you know, we got the infant woman going like, no. You want your eternal war? Fine. But we're pulling it out of the shadows. Ghost Fist, we need to get out of here now. And they'd like take off. Little busy not dying here. So they're trying to make their mad escape. Fight, action scene. Again, you should read it, get all the details for yourself. But it really comes down to the last page. What's the resolution? Now, understand that this was not written as a 6-issue miniseries to be, like, over. This was written to be an ongoing series, which is now going to just be a 6-issue miniseries. The last page tells me, oh, this was going to be cool. You've seen what little information I've gathered over the last year. Hall of Justice. Batman's talking. But after the incident yesterday in New York City, there's no more denying it. The Immortal Men are real. What are we going to do about it? The end? ? So, I've heard, like, Trajan, one of my fellow YouTubers out there that I greatly enjoy his pull videos, and sometimes he does reviews and stuff. His disappointment in this book was that it's like, oh yeah, it's going to be a great 6-issue miniseries, but what do you do after this? And I've always kind of disagreed with him, but I didn't really know the answer. And here it is. So it's now, we see that there are 4 other factions of the living immortals, that the Immortal Man, his progeny has to kind of like deal with that old mythos. And then you've also got the greater DC universe having them fold into that. And you've got things like the Justice League saying, yeah, we got to stop you guys. So you've got room for conflict with, you know, the Justice League, potentially individually these characters. You've got conflict with the actual Immortals themselves and their agendas, those agendas crossing over with, I mean, I think there's so much going on here. I really want to see this unfold. I really hope that DC takes another look at this, gives it another shot at some point. I think one of the reasons that this book struggled a little bit is I feel like, unlike Marvel, I feel like DC fans really like their connected universe. It's all around this Justice League. If you look at all the DC titles out, it's a Flash book, it's a Superman book, a Wonder Woman book, it's a Cyborg book. It's all these characters, their books. It's not like Marvel, where Marvel's got, I got a Venom book, I got Cosmic Ghost Rider, we got, all this weird stuff that is just separate from the main, the core Marvel, the Avengers Marvel that the movie universe is making famous, and then also the X-Men, which has always kind of been like a subset of Marvel. They're not afraid to just have some quirky little book, with characters doing stuff. DC builds their stuff around their main characters, and that's it. Like, side stuff just doesn't really work. I think part of that's the publisher's decisions, and I also think part of it's like the fans. And the New Age of Heroes is struggling, I think, partly because of that. Because all these books are pretty good, but the less they have to do with the actual DC universe, I think the fans are less interested. And I think, and I'm saying I think a lot, sorry about that, if this book had been a little bit more tied into this, I think it would have been more interesting. Or, sorry, I don't think it would have been more interesting. I think it's plenty interesting. I think fans would have gravitated towards it. And I think what the problem is with the New Age of Heroes, as far as an attention issue, is I don't think putting these characters in the New Age book is enough. I think what needed to happen was for the New Age characters to appear in their books. So you're kind of seeing that now a little bit. Silencer's appearing in, I think, Nightwing. So people who are reading the main core DC books that aren't really familiar with these New Age characters can get a taste of them without having to invest into their books themselves. And that's what I was kind of getting to. What I hope maybe DC will see is, like, you know what? Fan base really did like this book. When I look at Move the Needle posts, this is maybe arguably Silencer is the number one book I see people like, oh yeah, Move the Needle. Silencer's the other big one. I hope that maybe DC goes, you know what? This was a more popular book than the numbers really give credit to, because this is also one of the last Age of Hero books. And there's 8 titles. And it gets fatigue when you're buying number one issue. It's hard to add 8 new books to your pull list. They're only $2.99, but that's still, if you added all books, that's $24 extra a month. So people have to make concessions. And by the time this book came out, people were just like, I've already got the books I'm buying, I'm just going to skip on these. And the first couple issues of Immortal Men also had that issue of people just didn't get onto it. The story was weird. I mean, it was up my alley, but a lot of people were like, I don't know. And it took until like issue 4 to really get rolling. So I hope DC looks at all these things and says, there's something to this, fans like it, and brings these characters back in someone else's book. For instance, have a storyline with, I don't even know who it would be, maybe the Justice League Dark, maybe. I don't know where this would fit. Tynion is writing Justice League Dark. And have the Immortal Men, have a 6-issue story arc where it's in that book, but it features these as a main guest, so that the readers can get more familiar with these characters. And I think if enough popularity grows and people want to see this universe expanded, we could see a relaunch of this title. I don't know. I lament this being gone. This is a good series. I didn't comment on the art in this book. You got to kind of see on the video, like the last, not quite as bad as the last issue, but the art was very rushed. I don't fault the artist too much on that. I think they knew the book was ending, so there was this like cool, like don't necessarily need your A game. It sucks for the fans. It was still good enough to read and be entertaining. I think if they brought their A game to this book, though, it would build a fan base. I'm really bummed. So I give this book 4 stars, despite the art rating, because this issue was kind of the culmination of where it was going. It was fun, really good climax to the story as far as action pieces went. The action pieces were meaningful because they had spent time in the previous books building up these characters. And yeah, I really liked it. So hopefully you got something out of my review. Hopefully you'll get these, pick them up. I bet you could probably pick these up cheap. Since the series isn't carrying on, there'll probably be people selling them on eBay, 6-issue bulk, or find them in your stores. I don't know. I like these. They're worth your time. And I'm sorry that I won't be able to do any more reviews of these. So thanks for listening to me blab about this. Went a little extra long just because it is the last one I'm doing. And I hope you'll watch my videos. Leave comments, subscribe. Don't say anything too mean, hurt my feelings, or do whatever you want. It's the internet. I'm tough a little bit. Not really. Okay. See you later.